mentioned something a while ago that really struck my attention. I thought about what Jesus went through for us. He died simply to give his life that we can have life. But then again, how much are we willing to go out of our comfort zone to help some other child? The thing of it is, and you mentioned something about comfort. I think that what has happened, the church has gotten too comfortable. And they done got so comfortable until they feel like that is not their problem. It's somebody else's problem. But they fail to realize that Jesus said, I came to seek and to save that which was lost.
Right.
We should be doing, if we're going to be Christ-like, that means we're going to have to walk in his shoes. The Pharisees and the Sadducees did not agree with what he was doing, but he knew his responsibility. When God called you to purpose, he did not say it was going to be a level road, it's going to be a smooth road. It's going to be some ups and downs. You're going to have some problems. But ultimately, if you just stay in the process, God is going to move in him. He's going to teach you. And all of those situations that we've been in, God make us stronger. He make us more aware. He helped us to be able that we can be a blessing to somebody else. We went through, yes, I'll tell anybody. Yes, we went through hell. Stealing, lying, anything you can name, they did. But the thing of it is, God never give up on us. So why we have to give up on the children? We did something. We doing this, and we believe today that if God's telling us, wait in those woods, churches nowadays is so flourished with so much wealth and so much gift that they can help another child. But are they doing it? No. And here God's coming all the way down in them bushes, in those woods, to start something. And it's got to be to show this world what we are missing. We don't know what we got locked in that system. We could have presidents and preachers and teachers and missionary work all locked in that system. But if we don't do something about this and stop this process right now, it's swelling up every day, more and more and more. So I'm believing right now that God gonna use this as a catalyst to let this whole world know, hey, look what you're missing. Look what we have looked over. James 1:27 said, pure religion is undefiled, that God accepts that we take care of the widows and the orphans. Now, have we did that? No, we have not. And God got an indictment against these comfortable churches with these big, fine family life centers and doing all that. And I'm not against that because I would like to have one myself. But the fact of it is, we got all the resources we need. When we did what we done, we didn't have no resource. Only thing we had with each other. You talk about the community, we came together and realized that the church got to come together. We created our own wraparound support right there in the church. We deputized the men and the women to help us to watch over the children because this is a major problem that's going on. The schools got problems. I got to go to the school. I got to do this, got to do that. But not one time did I back up from the responsibility. Why? Because if God be for us, who can be against us? We've got to realize right now that God given us the ability to do the things that we do. Because the scripture said, greater is he that is in us than he that is what? We got this power over everything, on all the money for over everything, over it, because the Lord is with us. And that's all I know. And that's what he told Moses on that mountain. He said, look, Moses, you ain't got to worry about that. He said, if you don't know what to say, just shut your mouth up and I'll speak through you. So God done the whole thing. All we got to do is just be willing to go head on and do the work that God called us to do, and stop looking to the left and stop looking to the right, and stop looking up to the hill which come out here. We can get this thing done. This system is going to be empty. God is going to empty this system out. Why? Because he went all out of his way. And I'd like to say this too. The first law of nature is self-first, but the first law of grace is others first. Jesus went all out of his way to make sure that we can be sitting up here today.
Well, there's something to be said, too, for a demonstration case in a relatively isolated and poor community. Because if you can do it there,
you can do it anywhere.
Well, that's the idea, isn't it? And, you know, I was reminded when you were talking about part of the story of Elijah. And when Elijah is running from Jezebel, right, the evil queen, essentially, the nature worshiper, he ends up in the house of a widow. Right, and the widow has not enough food for her and her children, right? And there's a famous episode in that story where I think she hits the side of the flour barrel continually, and every day there's more flour provided. But the idea there is that it's a very fundamental idea, and it's the idea that you just expressed, which is that there's more possibility available even to people who think they're in poverty, even if they are in poverty, than they believe if their alignment is proper and their aim is up.
Amen.
Now, okay, so let's delve into that a little bit. So this is a poor community, doesn't have much resources. The church isn't even architecturally sound, and yet people do this. And so how do they manage it? Like, has it worked? And why did it work?
It worked because, number one, we came together. Number two, it worked because the Lord was with us. We had many needs and still do. But the problem of it is, some way and somehow, when you are doing this for the Lord and doing it in his will and obeying his commandment, God will drop stuff on you that you never dreamed. God will take somebody that you never heard of. And he said, look, I just was thinking about you and I just want to bless you with something. This is the way God, this is where you're able to accomplish things. And look, it ain't nothing to be grinning and say, oh man, look who I am. It ain't nothing like that. But the thing of it is, stand in the process. I can't get that word out of my mind. Process. A process is something that you stay with.
Yeah.
If you get out of the process, you done messed up already. But if you stay in the process, especially when God has already opened up them channels for you to walk through, all we got to do is just stay with the process, obey his will, and understand that God got your back. I don't care what happened. See, that's the same thing with Elijah. I mean, went to this widow house, and what happened? He said, look, I tell you what you do. He said, we just gonna, I got a little oil and a little whole cake, and me and my son, we're gonna eat, and we're gonna drink, and we're gonna die. But look what God said, look, don't do that. He said, give me mine first.
Yeah.
She obeyed the man of God and the mandate that was on his life. She obeyed that. What he did, and her meal bell never ran out again. This is what happened when we obey God. This is the thing that happened when we stay in the process and do what he said to. It ain't gonna happen no way, because we do have our adversary out there that fighting us on every hand, don't want to see us do this. And same thing you done about this whole movie. He fought us on tooth and nail. But let me tell you something. Only thing I can say about that, but God. When you going through something and you know that the Lord is with you, you don't even have to be afraid. Don't even look at their faces. Don't be afraid of that, because God is going to work it out some way and somehow. God is going to work it out. When Israel got out there in bondage and needed some water, what God told them to hit the rock and more water. It's just the way he does things. We don't always can't define it, but we know that God is with us.
So, one of the things that's interesting about that Elijah story too is that it's after Elijah has that encounter with the widow, who is contrasted with Jezebel, who's powerful. That's when his conscience awakens within him, right? Because this is a very crucial story, because Elijah, of course, is one of the prophets who appears with Jesus when he's transfigured. It's Elijah, Moses, and Jesus. And Elijah is the first person in the biblical sequence of stories who formally identifies God with conscience, right? Because it's Elijah who talks about the still small voice. He realizes that God's not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the storm, these awe-inspiring elements of nature. That's partly why he's opposed to the nature worshipers. And what he does instead is take everything that people had misapprehended in the awesomeness of nature as indicative of God, and he places it in a very lowly place in a way, which is the voice of conscience, right? Now, and part of the theme that we've been developing in this discussion is something like the awakening of conscience in the church. Okay, so now, do you think there's any particular significance in the fact that this is also something that happened in a predominantly black community?
No, it's something that is happening. Well, let me say it like this. What we did was in the black community, but what God did, what God is doing now, he exposing it to the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he want everybody to know that we all got a part in this. And like I said earlier, Everybody can't adopt, but everybody can be a part of adoption. We can do something to help. The sad part about it, if we don't do absolutely nothing, that's the sad part. But I do know one thing. If God be for us, I don't care what happened. I don't care what they can shake the graveyard and call dry bones to rise. It doesn't matter. If God be for us, we're gonna succeed. This movie, if Josh would just give you a short history of the hell, of the problem, of the situation, and of the trouble and the trauma that we have did just to get this far, and devil ain't through yet. He's still raising up his ugly head. But here's the thing of it is, God wants somebody who won't say no, who won't give up. And the lady told me the other day, she said these words. She said, whatever God say yes in your spirit, that's what you do. God done said yes, and that's what we're doing. We are not bagging up. We're not taking down. We're not running away, because you know why? We got the power over this, not the enemy. But he wants to throw up this bluff and make us feel and try to intimidate us. But look, I'm too old a cat to be fooled by a kid. I'm not finna let the enemy try to bring this stuff down on me, and I know better, because I already know what the Lord said. No weapon, I mean absolutely no weapon formed against us shall prosper. We are more than a conqueror, and I stand on that.
I'll say something.
You're pretty good at that.
I think there is something about your community and even the Black community at large, because of what in our country they've had to overcome historically, and the bond that's been created through community and family that they've thrived, because of and survived because of.
Right.
It's an example, I think, in a picture of what Christian family is supposed to be like, and I don't mean blood family, I just mean spiritual family as well. So I think there is something that we noticed that allowed for this to work and is an example that we want to follow. And I think we've lost, at least in the bigger cities, I think there's a lot of smaller communities that just kind of naturally have that, but it's
Right, right.
It was just being a Black woman and proud of being, Black but I
was
think
thinking
about my
too,
poor parents.
Well, there's a particular problem with the breakdown of family structures in the Black community. And so the fact that you're working within your marriage and then you're working within this community to rectify some of the consequences of that seems to me to be significant, in addition to the fact that you're doing it with, well, hypothetically with restricted resources. It's like, it's not so obvious in a way that your community is poor, because you actually have a community. And if you're rich and you don't have a community, you're poor. Right? Well, it's true. It's true.
I see what you're saying too.
True. You're just rich and isolated, and then that often just does you nothing but give you license to pursue your idiot habits. And that's partly why Christ says to the rich man who's in distress that he has to sell everything.
Sell it all.
You think you're rich, but you're not. You're not rich at all. In fact, your wealth is an enemy. That's kind of the enemy that you made allusion to with regards to the church. No, it's that comfort. You could think of that comfort. Comfort is Abraham's worst enemy when he begins his adventure, right? It's what he has to sacrifice immediately to go out into the world. Is comfort.
You said something that you brought up Abraham. Notice what Abraham did. Know what he did. Abraham, when God said, Abraham, get up and go to a land that I'll show you. Did he ask God which direction? Did he question God? Why me? Did he question what Abraham done? Gathered up his flock, gathered up his stuff, and started.
And hit the road.
But hit the road. Now, I'm sitting up here saying, how did Abraham know whether to go north, south, east, or west? The Lord's with him. And God was showing him within his own mind,
I'll show you
the way he should go. And he went that way.
Continually.
And you mentioned Lot a while ago. It came a time that God had to do something, because the Bible said, how can two walk together except they agree? So Abraham and Lot had to separate.
Right.
Because God had a plan for Abraham. That's why they separate. But the thing of it is, God blessed Lot and he also blessed Abraham. But Abraham had to cut. I preached a message one Sunday. To get a lot, you got to give up a lot. And that's what we do. You got to give up your lot to get a lot. That's what Abraham done. He gave up his lot
That's funny.
to get a lot. And after he gave up his lot, look what God done.
Yeah.
He said, Abraham, I'm going to make you rich. But he had to give up
Yeah.
his own nephew
Yeah.
in order to get this rich from God. And
Well, God offers Abraham 4 things, right? So he comes to Abraham and he says, leave what's comfortable. And he says, this is what will happen. Your life will become a blessing to you, right? Your name will become known validly among your contemporaries.
Yeah.
You will establish something permanent and of lasting value. For Abraham, it's a dynasty of nations. And you'll do that in a way that brings a blessing to everyone. Right. And so that call of adventurous responsibility, that's what came to you on the porch. Okay, so what has that done to your community? What have you seen happen as a consequence? First of all, to the people who adopted and the children, but what's been the broader impact on the community?
The enlargement of love, family, stability, faith, sound of hope, and passing down, stopping the generational curses.
Right.
The breaker, being the bondage breaker, and seeing that those children, because they were gathered into love and impact by change, that their children, my grandchildren that I nurture, that comes up to our home, will never have to experience what they parents.
Yeah.
You're talking about gratitude and gratefulness.
Right. So it's a permanent change.
It's a permanent change. It's
Yeah.
an everlasting, just as the promise
Yeah.
he gave unto Abraham.
Well, that's right. So what happens? So what happens to Abraham is that God says to him, if you follow the voice of adventure and let it take you wherever it wants to take you, then you'll become the father of nations. And so I've been thinking about that. Well, I think what it means,
Okay.
see, there's a mistake that evolutionary biologists make when they think about human reproduction. They think about reproduction as sex. But that's foolish because our children require this kind of dedicated commitment that you mentioned, right? Once you take on a child, it's like, it's a 40-year commitment, right? And so sex just gets the ball rolling, you might say. There's an immense sacrifice that has to be made after that. And that's the sacrifice that forces you to mature. Well, what God points out to Abraham is that if he does that right, he'll establish a pattern of fatherhood that will then cascade down the generations and make his descendants successful, right? Because God promises him that his descendants will defeat the people of Cain, for example. And those are the resentful, bitter descendants of Cain.